Once again, welcome to this Friday night meeting of Keep It Simple. It is now with great pleasure and much gratitude that I introduce Nick, who will be sharing on the topic, Too Many Years, Not Enough Days. Over to you, Nick. Thank you for your service.
Hi, I'm Nick with Stitch, Nicholas L, and I'm a cocaine addict, and it's nice to be here. I was sent some rules. I love meetings with rules. I usually completely forget them, but I'm going to behave today. I went to a meeting and they said there was no swearing and no this and no that, and the meeting collapsed about 20 years ago. Too many rules, not enough love. But I wasn't told to wear a tie, so I don't have to. This is my second meeting. I've been up since 5:30 this morning. I've facilitated a Zoom meeting in Thailand, even though I live in London. And I think it was Amy who said she was about 70-something days. So I looked it up. I'm 12,099 days. But it's a day at a time, which is why I called it Too Many Years and Not Enough Days. So my home group is Fulham, Thursday night. The steps we took, not the steps we're thinking about, not the steps that might work, but the steps we took. Because the big book talks about, here are the steps we took. And it says, may you find God now. And it says that before the steps. It doesn't say after the steps. It says before the steps. So apparently God is available whenever you want. And apparently God has always believed in me, but I might have not believed in God. And I was talking to someone the other day and they said, do you think God hears your prayers? I said, probably not. Why do you pray? I said, because I feel better. He said, what do you think God feels? I said, I have not got a clue. And I keep it that simple. I've set 13, 13, 13, so I should tell you about it. So how did I get too many years? And how did I get not enough days? How did I get some days? Well, I did what I was told, basically. I went to a meeting on the 8th of July, 1992. I still had alcohol and cocaine in my system. It was AA. I didn't know CA existed. And I listened. I spilt lots of cups of tea. I noticed that everyone was older than me. I ate far too many chocolate biscuits. And I was very excited when the plate went round. And I thought sponsorship meant they were going to pay for my cab home. I was very disappointed when the plate went over my head. And an old lady, who could have been someone's granny, but then, I was still under the effects, said, oh, no, it's not for you. You're here. This is for the people that aren't here. As the secretary pointed out tonight, we are selfish and self-centered to the core. So I'm always thinking it's for me. And I remember this is a fellowship of men and women. And I remember that. I believe it's changed now. People. I only go to one AA meeting a week because one of my sponsors, I've got 3 sponsors, goes to AA. And I don't think anything about that. I'm always amazed when I go on Zoom and there's them and they and her and she and this and that. And I just think, can't you just put your name up? But that's my stuff. So, I've been thinking about 2 things today. Overweight people on scooters who honk at me and ask me why I'm walking on a pavement. And I just think, did I get sober for this? Well, apparently, yes. Also, I go for a walk in a cemetery every day, and I always go on the dog path. And this woman stopped me and she said, you're always on the dog path. I said, yeah, well, serial killers don't tend to bring their animals when they're working. Because life's just too serious. You've got to have a laugh, and people just look at me like I'm nuts. But, we deal with that in step 2. I'm prepared to tell you I'm nuts. Most people just think they're completely normal. But you ask any psychiatrist, and they will tell you that most people have a little madness. Look at the government. That's my opinion, nothing to do with CA, of any country. Anyone wakes up and thinks they want to be in charge, they're probably a full-blown nutter or alcoholic or both. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be in charge of anything. I can't even run my life. Anyway, I went to this meeting and I noticed a lot of people were old, and I thought I was like stealing extra biscuits. I didn't realise they were free and that people put money in the pot to pay for them. Because why would you at 10 hours sober? What did my sponsor say? You only know where your arse is out of habit. You wipe it. And I really like that because I didn't really know very much. And he said, can you stop when you start? I said, not really. He said, so it's not a case of stopping then. It's a case of not starting. I went, right, he said. It talks about it in the book. It said, all this is rudimentary if we didn't have the first drink. And I hadn't read the book, but he was just what my sponsor and I call spoon feeding me, just little gems. And he said, would you like to hear what some alcoholics wrote after 10 years because they'd learnt a bit? I went, okay, what's that? He said, oh, it's a 12 by 12. I've got you one. So this is my original 12 by 12. It's over 30 years old. And I will never forget him reading this. Why all this insistence that every addict must hit the bottom? The answer is few people will sincerely try to practice the program unless they have hit bottom. Then it goes on. And it says, for this means the adoption of attitudes and actions. And he said, here are the questions. Answer them. Who wishes to be rigorously honest and tolerant? I said, I'm not sure. He said, thank you for your honesty. Who wants to confess his faults to another and make restitution for harm done? I said, I hope that comes later because I haven't got a pot to piss in. He went, yeah, okay. But are you willing? I went, yeah. He said, do you want to confess your faults and make restitution for the harm? I said, yeah. I said, the list might be long. He said, so I've been here a long time. Don't worry about it. We'll do it one person at a time. Who cares anything about a higher power? I said, my dad was struck dead by cancer when I was 15 and I felt abandoned. So I tried to burn a church down. So I don't think God's really that happy with me at the moment. He went, no, you'll be forgiven. Take it. I went, okay. Who wants to meditate and who wants to pray? I went, I'm not sure about that. He went, thank you for your honesty. Who wants to sacrifice time and energy in trying to carry the message? I said, oh, what's that? I said, well, he said, well, you haven't got a message. You've just got a mess. So I'll be trying to carry the message to you at the moment. He said, can I suggest that you sit at the front as I've heard you talking for a while? And I think I'd prefer it if you didn't. We could take a straw test if you want. He said, if you're quiet, you might learn something. I said, have I got far to go? He said, yes. He said, and you're going to go far. I said, why is that? He said, because you've got far to go. He said, I've been here 12 years. You've been here 2 days. He said, what do you reckon? Do you think I know a bit more about not drinking than you? I said, well, I did stop once. He said, what, were you in a coma? I said, I was in hospital at the time, coming down for an overdose of heroin. He went, oh, right. So when the circumstances are right. And I said, I heard a phrase that I heard in yesterday's meeting. He said, where did you hear that? I said, well, I was in a locked mental ward in the hospital. And this woman came in and she had a coat on and she looked like a doctor and she had all these keys. And she said, hello, I'm Dr. Da-da-da-da-da. And she quoted all these letters. She said, for the purposes of this conversation, well, actually, you'll just be listening. For the purpose of me talking, I am a power greater than you. And blimey, I was aged 22, and I heard that when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous at age 38. And I remember that woman telling me, she said, unless you give me some sort of reason why you took 500 pills, you are not allowed out of that door. So I went, well, I had a headache. She went, was it that bad? I said, well, after the first 3 bottles of Chianti, I said, it's got 17% and it's grown on the northern sides of slopes. She said, I know what Chianti is. I said, I had a bit of a headache. So I took about 10 pills. She said, well, normal people take 1. I said, yeah, but well, to me, 1's good, 10's better. It's always worked with drinks and money and women. And she went, yeah, okay. So what happened? I said, well, I kept drinking and I kept getting worse. So I kept taking it. So I just took the lot. She said, well, you're very good, very lucky that the ambulance found you and bounced onto your stomach and made you throw up. She said, and we think we've got most out. She said, but the bad news is over 50% of people who take 500 paracetamol die because their liver can't take it. So this is very serious. You hear about heroin, you hear about cocaine, but you don't hear about paracetamol. Your condition is serious. So you better stay here a few days while we flush you out. And fortunately, I didn't die, which was a great relief to my mother and myself. But, you know, the book talks about it. Fail to heed ominous warnings, or any warnings, really. Every time I met a policeman, he'd go, you shouldn't drink quite so much. We keep having conversations. I went, really? You all look the same. Because, you know, a policeman in a uniform is a policeman in a uniform when you've had a bottle of beer or two. And I just ignored everyone, really. And it got worse, you know. When the book talks about geographicals, I went to Paris. I thought, well, everyone drinks in Paris. I got asked to leave Christian Dior for drinking too much. And I just thought, these French, they're not doing it right. See, I was drinking schnapps at 6 a.m. with the German tourists, because that's what we did. And all those namby-pamby French people, they were just like catching up, having a couple of steak frites and a couple of glasses of wine. And I was like tanking up. So I used to go and order. You don't order pints unless you're on Champs-Elysees and you're a tourist and you want to give £30 to someone. You order a demi, a half. So I was only drinking halves. And if you're drinking halves, you're not really counting. But after about 20, you realise you've had about 10 pints. Going to work and thinking it was completely normal. And there was this guy, and he was called Jacques. And he had a red face. He stumbled about, and he crashed the lorry. And he was a delivery driver. So everyone looked at Jacques, because he was the alcoholic. And then Jacques really let me down. He died. And then suddenly, the Eye of Sauron, that's everyone I'm working with, started looking at me. Because apparently I had a drinking problem. So I'm not sure if I got sacked or I left. But anyway, I ceased employment. And I came back to England because the French didn't drink properly. And I went back on the cocaine, really. So I met a heroin addict, as you do in a pub. And I said, I'm looking for somewhere to live. She went, oh, all right. Yeah, I've got a spare bedroom. She said, have you got a lot of stuff? I said, well, I've got 2 microwaves and a black sack. She said, 2 microwaves? I said, yeah. I like making freebase. She went, oh, right. She said, 2? I said, yeah, well, I like to start 1 lot. And then while that's doing, I like to cook up some more. So freebase, for anyone who's not, is the forerunner of crack. And I have to tell you, I don't know why it's called freebase. Well, actually, I do, but there's nothing free about it. What it means is it's an alcoholic base as opposed to an aqueous solution. That's the science bit. So basically, you can't shove it up your nose because it won't work. It will just block your nose. And that's my 13 minutes. So push again, 13 minutes. Anyway, it all went terribly wrong, really. And one day I went to the pub and I came home and I had about an ounce in my pocket. I had about £1,000. I'd had a good week. And I was eating chips and the tomato sauce was looking like blood and I started to feel dizzy and I fell over. And I woke up the next day, it was 8th of July, and I'd been in a coma. The money was in my pocket, the drugs in my pocket, heroin addict wasn't there, and I couldn't move. And I used to say my face to my floor. I didn't pay any rent. My face to the heroin addict's floor with 2 pints of my blood, and all I could see was white things. And they were quite a few of my teeth. So, because I wasn't an addict, I took my very expensive Swiss Army knife and cut my face off her floor. Going backwards, like they do in films, prequel, I'd met this guy that I used to sell gear to, and he said, if you ever want to stop, phone me. He said, here's my number. I said, I got your bloody number. I said, oh, sorry, I've got your number. I said, I know it off by heart. He said, yeah, but it's an AA number. I went, what's that? He said, altered attitude. I went, well, you stopped. I went, no, you need to know. I threw him out of my house. He said, you'll need it one day. So I crawled into the bedroom and I went to the jacket where I knew it was. I intuitively knew where it was and I phoned him and I said, I think I am dying. Can you help me? And that was the start of my journey. The admission of complete defeat, burnt to the ground. You know, people say, oh, it's like being in a lift and you can get off at any floor. I didn't even know I was in a burning building in that particular area, never mind the lift. So, you know, all that nonsense. You've got to want to stop. And I usually ask my sponsees, do you think you're drowning or you're waving? Because in the 12 by 12, it says the desperation of a drowning man, not a waving man. And a lot of people in my home group are waving. They are not drowning. They are taking up valuable space. But it's up for them to work that out when they do this work with their sponsor, when their sponsor tries to figure out if they're a real alcoholic or they should just go home and behave and be nice to their mum and go down the pub once a week. Because there are people in the rooms of CA who need to just stop and go home. They haven't got what we've got. They don't think about overweight people on scooters. They don't talk about serial killers. They don't walk through cemeteries. I mean, I am so obsessed with cemeteries. I walk through a cemetery every time I go to hospital and go, not today, we're going to hospital. And someone said, what's that? I said, well, I'm nervous. And that's what I do. Anyway, so I got to AA. And I've told you how I got to AA. And I went there for about 6 weeks. And then I stopped going for 1 week. I was watching EastEnders. It's a really bad, awful programme that's been on forever. It's just like a soap opera. It's a bit like the ones where the walls move and everything. It's cheap and cheerful. And it's just trash. You can miss it for 10 years and come back and go, oh, still here, you know. And he's shagged the missus and done this and done that and is an alcoholic. And, you know, it's just craziness. And my sponsor phoned me up and he said, I didn't have a mobile. So I had a home phone. So, you know, when I phoned my friend, I didn't dial them. I had to go out and put coins in a phone box. So when newcomers give you a hard time that they run out of the battery, I just start laughing. In fact, I laugh quite loudly. I just think you've no idea. You don't even know what cassette tapes are, do you? You have no idea of the pain we went through. And I was asked, would I like to stop? Or would I like to stop starting? So I went, yes. So he said, well, if you can't stop, do you think you're powerless? I said, well, I'm definitely powerless. He said, do you say things and can't do them? He said, do you think you're unmanageable? I said, well, I think I'm unmanageable. He said, that's brilliant, because step one is admitted they were powerless and unmanageable. So that's step one done. And I said, yeah, but my mates had to write lots of stories. He said, yeah, I'm not sponsoring you, mates. I'm sponsoring you. Apparently you're powerless and you're unmanageable. We're on step two. Do you think that a power greater than you could help you? I said, what sort of thing? He said, does your cat smoke crack? I went, no. He said, well, he's a power greater than you. Just choose something. I went, all right, I could do that. He said, that's fantastic. We're on step three. He said, get walking. I'll meet you in the big church called Brompton Oratory. We're not going to talk to a priest. We're going to somewhere that smells nice. So I went to this oratory and it smelt of myrrh. And I have to tell you, if Jesus wears aftershave, it's got to be myrrh. It's just like cool, Tom Ford Oud at like $400 a bottle. It smells and it's lovely, and they use it on film sets. And he said, right, knees, open the book, this page, step 3 prayer, after me. And we read it. And that was it. He said, right, you're on step 4. I said, what's that? And he got out a piece of paper and he got a pencil. He said, page 58, phone me when you've done it. Not, would you like to do this? Do you need me to explain? Just get on with it. Literally, in a day. Just get on with it. I went from 0 to step 4 in one day. Now, I can do it in 2 hours with a sponsee if they want to. All this, well, I'm not feeling too good, or I've got to have my mum and got to pick up the kid. You were smoking crack in a dustbin yesterday. What is wrong with you? Some people call me harsh. I'm just trying to reflect how I felt. And if crazy stuff. Anyway, so I said, have I got to read out the step 4? He went, yeah. So step 4, I thought, well, I don't like England. I'm going to go to Greece and get a suntan while reading my step 4. Writing my step 4. So I got there, and the whole trip, aeroplanes, food, hotel, everything, cost £70. That's about $85. That's how old I am. And I went to Spetses in Greece, and it's like to go into Biarritz. It's beautiful. And I got 2 instructions. Use a permanent ink pen and buy some suntan cream and put it on your head. Anyway, I failed to heed warnings. So I started at 8 o'clock. I just used a normal pen. I didn't check it was permanent. And I forgot to put my suntan cream on. And I wrote, my dad, and I used quite a rude word, died and abandoned me for about 4 pages. I was just angry. Then I started crying, and I noticed it was about midday. And then I pulled my eyes, and I looked down, and I was crying, and all my step 4 started to run because I hadn't used a proper pen. And then I touched my head and I realised I was in Greece. It was 37 degrees, which is about 110 for you Americans. And I burnt my head. And I had to walk into town looking like Alice Cooper on acid with a big book and go and start again. Anyway, I started again and a lady came out and said, oh, hello. Are you an alcoholic? Oh, she said, are you reading that book? She said, yeah, my husband did that. And this is her, not me. He's still a wanker, even though he did step 4. Hey, good luck with that. Have you got any English books you can leave me when you've done it? And you have to go home and talk to your sponsor and pray to God on your knees? Because that's what he did. Didn't work for him. Hope it works out for you. And just disappeared. And I just thought, my sponsor been sending nutters to check up on me. It was just like mad. Anyway, I got home. I phoned him. And I had to phone specific times. No answer phone, no mobile. And he was a businessman. And I had 144 pages. It went on. He said, maybe we should do about 20. What, 20 pages? He went, no, 20 resentments. He said, my life's not that long. We haven't got time for that. But well done for being willing. And he fell asleep after about number 10 because they were long drawn out, you know, and I didn't like this and I didn't like that. And it was just me mum, do you know what I mean? And this and that. And I said, on the second time I woke him up, I said, are you listening? He said, yeah, I'm trying to make it interesting, but it's really tedious. You just drank, shagged a load of people, fell over, lot of lit cigarettes, and ended up on my plastic chair in my kitchen. You know, this is not a James Bond novel. This is a tragedy. This is sad. And the unfortunate thing is you started it all. This was your grand plan. And he said, tissues are on the right. And I just bawled my eyes out. And then a 9-year-old came and she said, Daddy says, do you want a cup of tea and have you stop crying? That's a 9-year-old, right? I'm in a puddle, age 39, on the floor, talking to a 9-year-old. And she's making more sense than I am. So I blubbed, that would be very nice. She said, oh, they all get like that after step 5. I thought, how come this 9-year-old? And it was very funny and it was very endearing. And I used to talk very fast, and I phoned his house once, and he sponsored 3 Nicholases. So she said, Daddy, Nicholas phoned up and said, oh, which one was that, darling? He said, oh, fast Nick, terribly fast Nick. And apparently that was me. So I've slowed down as a result of doing the steps. Anyway, we went to the big book, and he found the page where it starts, on Dr. Bob's day off. Dr. Bob had me down to his office. We went through the 6-step program. My sponsor looked at me and went, yeah, unfortunately, they've doubled it because they knew you were coming. Always the difficult people. So he said, I will help you out. Starting with arrogance, I'd say you had quite a lot of difficulty with most things. So let's just ask God on our knees to help you in a general way to help deal with that, because you can't. He said, why don't you just write down some of your most gross handicaps, I think the word is. He says, those that have served you but will no longer serve you or of no use. He said, take stealing. That could be construed as looking after yourself and looking out for your needs without money. Take exaggerating, a defense mechanism because you're afraid. And he started to turn all my defaults into character assets and explain the opposite and how we might look at them. Your loud mouth. Well, if we tame that, you'll be able to speak when you get sober. Because I have great hopes for you. He said, I think you're going to stay. But he said, occasionally I get it wrong. He said, but they give me the difficult ones. And let's face it, you are difficult, but you are persistent. Now we need to be resistant, and now we need to be consistent. So you need to ask God every day to help you with that. Right, he said, did you write down all the people that you pissed off in step 4, as I told you? He went, yes, give me a list. Are there people missing? He went, yes. He said, fantastic. Write a complete list of all the people who are missing and ring me when you've finished. And again, I made the mistake. I said, but my friend, he said, you're not going to give me my friend again, are you? I went, yeah. He said, well, what is your friend doing? He said, well, he was told, never, not now, and I'm willing. He said, no, we're not doing that. What you're going to do is you're going to write the whole list and you're going to pray against every name until you are willing, and then you're going to come back to me. I think I took 3 days. He said, oh, that's fantastic. Show me the list. And he got the list and he turned it upside down like that. He said, sponsees usually put the people they don't want to see at the bottom. So let's attack the problem head on, eh? He said, why don't you go and see your mum? I said, I'm not sure what I'm going to say. He said, pray, it'll come. And I met her in a cafe and I started talking to her. And she said, stop. I know all that. I was at the end of it. On the 2nd of September, which is next week, in 1954, I gave birth to you. And me and your dad were very happy because we had a son. And the last thing your father said before he died was, I'll miss Nicholas growing up. She said, on a bad day, I thank God that he missed you growing up. But now you've stopped drinking and all the nonsense. So you finally started to grow up. This is almost biblical. You have returned. I have prayed every day since you were 16 that you would come to your senses. God's timetable is unknown to us. But hey, he's always got the timetable. And I thought my mum used to just go to church to sing. And she said, can I just say one thing? Do you remember I never used to have an answer phone? I said, yes. She said, do you know why I got an answer phone? I said, no. She said, I was expecting a call from a policeman, an ambulanceman, or a hospital, or a doctor to tell me you were dead. So I bought a chair and it lives next to my answer phone, and I make a cup of tea and I press the answer phone, and before I press it, I pray that I will be able to bear the news, whatever it is, because I'm sit down like a good Yorkshire lass with a cup of tea and a biscuit, and I pray it is not news of your demise. And that is what I put my mother through, and I liked her. So you can imagine some of the amends to people that I didn't like. And one man was in a pub. I couldn't find him anywhere. He was in a pub. And I said, I can't remember his name. I said, can I speak to you? Can I speak to you? And, oh, it's you. I said, I've stopped drinking. And he went, so right now, no drink, no drugs. I went, yeah. And he put his leg right behind me and he had me on the floor with his boot on my neck within about a millionth of a second. He said, if you ever come near me, my wife, or my daughter, I will kill you and gut you. I don't care where you've gone, who you found, even if it's Jesus. Disappear. I never want to see you again, ever. And that was someone I thought might be quite easy on me. So, always talk to your sponsor. Do it in a public place if you're worried they're going to get a bit uppity. Anyway, the good news is I'm still breathing. I've never seen him. Anyway, going back to the heroin addict, and I love telling this story. This was the best one. So I phoned her up, and she'd already got an amends from the guy that helped me that I phoned, the one that got me to AA. She said, oh, you're going to do that men's stuff? Yeah, all right. Well, I want dinner and half a bottle of champagne while you bore me with all that rubbish you did. So I said, my sponsor, she said, I don't care about your sponsor. I said, you're apologising to me. We're going to a pizza place and I'm having a margarita and a bottle of champagne. And if I'm a drink now, I'm having another one. She was a heroin addict, by the way. So I had the little cards, just in case anyone's new. The cards. You have a card and you write it all down. And I said, and we got to the pizza place and I said, she said, I know your name. I said, please, could you let me do it? She said, all right then. I said, I have now stopped drinking and taking cocaine. And when I look back on my life, I saw that the last 6 years, I was a nightmare to you. Now, the waiters were slowing down very slightly as they passed the table when I was reading the card out. Right? So she said, yeah, get on with it. So I said, with the hookers, and the hookers with the dogs, Anna stole your heroin, Anna called your mum a slag, the whole, and the waiters now are going quite slowly past the table with the pizzas, yeah. And she said, right, she said, okay, she said, I believe it's my turn now. I get to tell you all the stuff that you didn't remember. And my God, did she remember a lot. Anyway, waiters were just like standing next to us, just going, Yeah, it's just like the whole restaurant. And I just thought, keep going, Nicholas. Do not run away. Keep going. Billy told you, if you do this, you got it. Anyway, she said, right, that's enough. And it had been going for about 20 minutes. And there was, you could just hear glasses clinking. And occasionally, shh, he's talking. And, it was so embarrassing. It was fantastic. Talk about wash your sins in public. And she said, finally, she said, there were two things. There was the second best day of my life. So I said, I dared. I said, and what was that? She said, when you went to AA and stopped drinking. That was a very good day. And I thought, oh my goodness. So I said, what was the best day? Oh, lots of swearing. I will not repeat. And you left. The door's over there. Pay the bill and order me another bottle of champagne. Do not come near me, phone me or contact me ever again. Ever. I've got about 20 people. If they ever see me, I'm dead. If I even try to talk to them. At the end it was like guns. Didn't do crystal meth. I missed that. And not really mad at ketamine. I remember going to a rave and this guy came up to me and he said, would you like some water? And I just looked at him in like absolute. I said, water? Why would I want water? I need a drink. And he said, you're in the wrong place, mate. So that was my one and only rave because they don't drink. I just thought it was pathetic. I did notice, though, that a man had a firework stuck up his arse and someone lit it. That ketamine made people do very strange things. But since I did all the amends, and I'm going to close it now, because I'm probably nearly done. Not enough days. Sorry. Not enough days and too many years and not enough days. So I don't know if they do this in your home group, but in my home group, they go, to show the newcomer it works, everyone put their hand up who's a year, and about 30 people put their hand up. And I want to go to the front and go, right, let's have it. Anyone over 5 put their hand up. 3 people. Anyone over 20, put their hand up, 2 people. Anyone over 30, me. So actually, most people don't get enough years, don't get enough days, and leave. This is my experience. I am talking to 62 people today, and some of you ain't going to make it. And I am not going to be one of them with a bit of luck. It's by God's grace. I used to have this sponsor, and he said, what do you think you are doing to stay sober today? Don't bother answering, because you can't. I don't care if you go to 200 meetings. I don't care if you sponsor 5,000 people. I don't care if you read the book backwards in Irish. I don't care about that. He said, it is by God's grace and God's grace alone. He decides whether you live or die. There is one that has all power, and that not you, Nicholas. Remember, you didn't do anything. You couldn't do anything. He said, you make fabulous shirts because God allows you to make the shirts. Because he sends you customers. And one day he'll turn the tap off. And guess what? You'll be a used-to-be shirt maker and still an alcoholic. So what do you think's more important? I said, going to meetings first. He said, yes. Make sure your toy box is Cocaine Anonymous and put your life, your wife, your partner, your kids and your dogs and your shirt making in the box. Because anything you put that's not CA as the box with God in control, you're going to walk out the door. It's not if, it's when. And the drink doesn't start when you have the drink. The drink may start 3 years ago when somebody got the wrong biscuits. When they didn't ask you to do your chair at the home group. You thought, why am I coming here? When you didn't get your way at the meeting because you hadn't learned to fail. Fail fast. Apologise faster. Learn to lose. Learn to come second. These are quite difficult things to take on board. But everyone I meet who has multiple years, including my darling friend Patty S, who talked today, and she mentioned Billy, my friend. That's Billy F, as opposed to Billy, my driver friend in Holland. And, hey Billy, talks about it. We talk about God and that we are powerless. You know, my trajectory is not like a rocket. There's no straighten up. There's that. And that's before I even get out of bed. You know, my life goes quite well, and then I have to get up. And here's a hint for everyone. Last bit. This is nothing to do with CA. This is my experience. When you meet an idiot, do not engage in conversation. Otherwise, people will just see 2 idiots talking to each other. Thank you.